the content is about the general life science research field. So lecture 1 we handle conduct and ethics. Lecture 2 we handle misconduct and how to avoid them with certain mechanism. Alright, and then lecture 3 we want to see from the life science aspect or from the whole Earth, planet Earth. How are we going to address these many different issues? Right? So what kind of ethical concern should we have? And then in the following 4 or 3 lectures, 4, 5, and 6, we will look into the different specific area. Okay. So before that, we need to start from something very big. That is planet Earth. Okay, you may call it environmental ethics, and then you would ask, is it also related to my research field? I would say it's yes, right? Because this is what we call everything under the sun. 太陽底下無新事. Everything is under the sun. That is what we need to deal with. So why do we take a look of the solar system? Beyond the solar system would be very difficult for us to study. Of course, you say, oh, I'm an astronomer, astronomist, and then you can study something beyond this solar system. But most of the time, we would like to focus things that everything's under the sun. Under this concept, then you may say, oh, even outside the space or in the outer space would be very difficult to study, right? Or could be wrong. I still remember when I was a student, we had the ecology test at the time. The moon was investigated with some data of carbon-14, trying to prove that the microorganisms actually could be there. Okay, so they were trying to determine whether that carbon-14 got fixed in some microorganisms in the sample from Mars or from Moon, and of course the reference point would be from planet Earth. Then if you understand that, then we would think or look at the order of the planet, right, from the closest to Sun and then to more far away. Even today we are still arguing whether these other so-called planets really functioning or existing in the way that we are imagined. But at least Venus, Mars, and planet Earth are the 3 very close with similar sizes and also with the similar distance to the Sun. So we usually like to compare with data around this planet. But if we focus on life on Earth, well, we are life science, right? So we only study life, and apparently only planet Earth has living organism. Then we ask the first question is, do we own this planet Earth? Who owns this? I remember the first lecture I asked who Christian, and then only 1 or 2 raised their hand. So you wouldn't tell me that God creates everything, then you don't need to answer me. So I'm throwing to you this very good question, I mean very basic question. Do humans own the planet Earth? The answer obviously is no, right? Because we only exist for the last, I don't know, maybe 5,000 or 10,000 years. If we all die, planet Earth is still here. Right? So this is the way that we start of thinking, I mean in terms of ethical issue, why we care. Because we don't own planet Earth. So on the other hand, planet Earth has been here for at least 4 billion years. In the US, they always say, okay, in God we trust. Then actually no one owns, 冇人擁有呢個地球。So we are we are all using the resources on this planet Earth. So topic number 1 is planet Earth and its resources. So where do these resources come from? 啲材料、啲資源點樣嚟嘅咧？ Why they are here?
Some provide
Energy.
and then energy can use to raise the material that is needed for life to support life.
Other than sun and energy, what is the second most important thing we need on Earth?
Oxygen and water.
Oxygen and water. But 4 billion years ago, were there enough water? Was there enough oxygen? No, right? So the planet Earth is constantly changing. So I always challenge my friends on the theory of global warming. They always say, oh, no. The world is changing. So never mind what do you mean by global warming. Actually, the world is changing. I say, I know, yes. But we are talking about recent decades or recent centuries. The change or the changes are so drastically changing, right? So the key point what I'm trying to bring to you is that we have plants, right? We started to have biological organisms, we started to have plants, so those plants could actually absorb carbon dioxide and produce oxygen. So it was seen the beginning of the plant, but plant relies on what? Sun energy, solar energy, right? And don't forget the 2 laws of thermodynamics, or the first law, energy is what?
Cannot be created or destroyed.
Cannot be created or destroyed. It all from the sun. The sun is from solar activity. You cannot destroy it. And what is the second law? The second law is about what? The change of the energy form, right? This change is to achieve what we call the maximum randomness, 最大嘅自由度. So if you really want to do something against this kind of what we call the 2 laws of thermodynamics, you can transform the energy. Like 200 years ago, they found that perhaps you can burn coal, and then a coal, after burning, would release heat. If that heat could steam the engine, or that heat could boil water, and then the water, after boil, would release steam, and that becomes steam engine, right? That's the beginning of industrial revolution. Am I right? Now then you are using energy. You are using energy to convert this energy into steam engine. And of course, later on, I suppose, how many of you watched that movie? I mentioned that more than once, Current War. Right? So, what is the major impression of that from the movie? From you? That really changed the world, right? Now we started to have light and also flaming. Flaming also from light, right? And then we may ignite it, and then we may develop a flame. And then we have to rely on the energy and convert the energy into electricity. Right? What I'm trying to say is that we have to first consider energy flows. I put this up here. And then if you understand that, then you would understand, okay, we are actually using coal energy or any other what we call fossil fuel energy. Fossil fuel energy all came from the past, right? They all came from the past because those were carbon trapped in plants or other animals and then become fossil. And they became a fossil after so many millions of years. We dig them up and we figure out that we can burn them and release the energy back. But when the energy released back, one of the side effects is that it also produces carbon. And now, please be reminded the first law, not just energy. All those materials could neither be destroyed nor created. Those materials have been here on the planet Earth for such a long time. What we are doing in an ecosystem, for example, we are just transferring the energy from different trophic levels, one by one, right? Many people ignore another food chain, what we call is the detritus food chain. Because the detritus food chain also rely on the bacterial degradation or microbial degradation of all those materials. Okay, but putting these two systems together, we appreciate the nature of science is that we have this energy flow concept. So if you want to do anything, you are going to against first law and second law. Right? I'm talking about this, it's a lot more like more philosophical. We are not actually against the laws, right? We are just using extra energy. But that energy is actually from fossil fuel or from other means, right? So we need to have energy to sustain this planet Earth. Okay? So environmental ethics or any ethics around the globe or around the world, we have to think about humanity's relationship and understand and the obligation to the environment, because we don't own this planet. We are using all the resources from this planet. We want to do something good about it. Now, when we talk about conduct, it's about doing something good, right? So, and the man and nature, of course, some Chinese thought about we are now in sun, everybody would think about eternity. Yeah. So what is the meaning of eternity? What is the meaning of eternity? You have any better answer? What is the meaning of eternity? Why are we working so hard? We don't own the planet Earth. We just die and pass away. And then next generation would come in, right? But it's more than that. Then we have the next generation to concern with, right? We want our next generation to enjoy the use of these resources. Of course, you may say, okay, every day we receive a lot of sunlight. So we could use this energy to produce a lot of things, right? That is one way. So we try very hard to find out what we call the renewable energy, which is what we call sustainable, because as long as there's sunlight, we can make good use of this energy and produce some useful resources. And then these questions are not easy to answer. Then, who owns Mother Nature? Okay, we swing back a little bit or set back a little bit. Don't talk about the whole universe. Don't talk about the whole planet. Or we just talk about Mother Nature. Or we just talk about land, or ocean, or rivers. Who owns them? You don't own them. So the nation owns it. Right? 國家擁有。個國家主權。Then every nation is saying that I own this. Look at what's happening in South China Sea. The Philippines, Vietnam, Taiwan, China, they all own different islands, right? So who owns them? How are we going to solve this kind of issue? war? Oh my goodness. 你都好勇武. Yes, originally, yes, by war, but then at the end, you end up hurting the two countries, right? And then they stopped. Right? So we have to go back to normal. So what can we do next? Yeah, we had First World War. He's right. Unavoidably. And then Second World War. Alright? First World War started in Europe. And then Second World War more or less started from Europe and Japan in East Asia. We cannot all rely on war, right? We all love peace. Make love. No war. So what do we do next? You know what happened after next? After the Second World War, what did they do? Hmm?
Cold War.
Yes, it's Cold War because they don't want to really fight against each other. They formed the United Nations. Right? Those 5 countries who claimed that they won the war. You're right. The winners take all, right? Then after they have finished the war, they form United Nations, right?
And then start Korean War.
And then start Korean War. Those are regional war. Now those are about ideology. 呢個意識形態問題. Of course, you say, oh, they are fighting for resources, right? Yeah, it's rather interesting. I mean, this class is more like a political science and more than just life science. Okay, so let's come back from political science to life science. Then we start to form United Nations. Right, the 5 常任理事國, those major countries formed the United Nations. Right, the old day was Soviet Union, now Russia, U.S., China, Japan's not there, France,
United Kingdom,
and UK, right? And they started to form this United Nations, hoping that in the future, there will be no war. Okay, of course, there will be different kinds of wars, right? But if we talk about who owns Mother Nature, who owns the lands, and who owns the oceans and the river, that could be very tricky. Then you would say, okay, there must be some geographical regions. And then the geographical regions would define nations, right? You see, right now, today, there are many different views on what is China. You know, Chinese were just Zhongyun, you know, in the middle part of Yangtze River and Yellow River. And then the other area, Xinjiang or, you know, Tibet, they geographically, they don't belong us. Right? Of course, nowadays it's more tricky because China is dominating this region after Second World War. All right, but if you look at the governing area of China, and then of course, oh, there were no China. China only emerged after the end of Qing Dynasty. That was ROC. Now moved to Taiwan. So they still call it ROC in Taiwan, right? What I'm trying to say, I'm not trying to make this lecture more on political science. I'm trying to make a rationale out from all these competitions and fighting for natural resources. Okay, you're right. We started with war, but then we cannot, or we could not afford to have too many wars, right? Then who owns, like for example, the river? Come back to environmental issues, sorry, again. But that is related to a land issue, like Dongchong River. So who owns this river? Or Pearl River. We were downstream from the Pearl River. Guangzhou owned the upper part of Pearl River. But then you guys complain they are releasing a lot of pollutants down. So what would you do to help? I did some study with 2 research labs in Guangdong, one in Zhongshan University or SYSU. Okay. Oh, okay. That's just to do a research. Now they're talking about Taiwan, the Big Bay Area. Now when you do a research, you have to open up the scope, not just in Hong Kong, but the whole Big Bay Area, to collect samples from Guangdong East, and then Guangdong West, and then to Guangxi East, or even down to South China Sea, right? And then who own the oceans. So we end up having what we call United Nations, and then international treaties and international collaboration, like in the US, the Great Lake areas, Canada and US, they work together to protect Great Lakes, and because the lakes actually spanning the area in different countries. In Europe, one of the concerns that if UK is coming out from Europe is that Europe is spending a lot of money. France, Italy, Norway, and Germany working together on huge projects. You know, molecular biology, they have EMBO, European Molecular Biology Organization. Or those food or molecular biology, or even physics, or environmental studies, they all work together, and so that form a very strong European collaboration. And one of the concepts that I'm not so sure whether I should put it here or not is this tragedy of the commons. Obviously, I would teach or touch upon this concept when I teach Introduction to Environmental Science, but you guys before teaching this course, or I may put this in the concept of sustainable development. But it is not really about sustainable development, because that was even well before the concept of sustainable development. 1960, that was after Second World War, and then after Korean War, they have what? Vietnam War, yes, exactly. Vietnam War. And then in California, they had kind of left wing, right, 左派. So at the time, there was a fight between communism and capitalism, right? So this professor is actually a microbiologist, Gary Hardin. In 1967, I think he proposed a concept. Oh, sorry, 1968. That was in the middle of or almost the end of the Vietnam War. So he asked a very fundamental question, and now it's well known as tragedy of the commons, 公社嘅悲劇. At the time, there were many countries or counties in the US or even in Israel, or even in Hong Kong, they developed their own commons, 公社. Okay, mimicking those social model as suggested by Marxism. Okay. So in a common area, say like for example, this is a grassland. There were shepherds, okay, you know what communism is all about. You only raise one sheep. You too, only one sheep. One. Everybody's happy, right? Until one day there's one very aggressive shepherd. I want to raise more sheep. And then they will ask the same question, may I do so? Because your sheep are eating up my grass. Right? And then at the end, more and more sheep being raised in the same common. And that is what we call the tragedy of the commons. Because at the end, you really have to concern the environmental cost. But then the key questions here is what? In this common, do we have enough resources? 我哋有冇足夠嘅資源去 支持咧？ And then it would come back to the question of how to allocate resources, either communism, 公制. Okay, you own one ship, your server, you own one ship only. One, each one can only have one. That's it. Don't ask for more. Of course, something wrong with communism. We all know that who is going to make the decision? Oh, the leader, the party leader. Okay. Another school of thought is capitalism. I don't mind. You just raise your own ship, and then you guys form a merchant organization. You among yourself, all these servers decide what to do, how to deal with this. Right? And then the two markets actually collapsed. 10 years ago, even capitalism collapsed in the US because no one can control those big companies. They were known as too big to fall. So the government must put in money to support those big companies and make them survive in order not to allow them to fall. Same thing is true in communism. We know the mechanism is not working unless you are having a dictator. The dictator, if you want to have two sheep, I will just grab you and make you disappear. Right? It's that simple. Then you would ask, this is not a fair society. When one dictator, if he knows you, you can keep his sheep. I'll take him away. Then who is exercising the power is actually abusing the power, right? And same thing is true 30 years ago, we knew that Deng Xiaoping thought that, oh, okay, because everybody is receiving the same monthly salaries, so no one really like to work. I just like to keep one sheep and then everybody is not doing anything. So the society is not going anywhere. And then they decided to make everybody to what? To be motivated. Okay, so they allow what they call is 社會主義市場經濟, is the market running under social rule. All right, but then that was a test, and then that was hoping that according to Marxism, eventually the capitalism would emerge into socialism. That is exactly what's happening in Northern Europe and also in Canada. But the reality is that they have to control the population. They have to control all the resources, right? It's not easy to maintain, but coming back to the case in Hong Kong or in China is that Deng Xiaoping said, okay, perhaps we be a little bit more rich. Everybody become, or part of the country become middle class. 小康之家，一部分人富起來。Okay, eventually we'll move on to socialism. And of course, I have to stop this. It's more political expression rather than discussing on an ethic issue. But it's actually an ethic issue. An ethic issue is right now in China. President Xi is exercising his right or ruling as a ruling party, and the president going over to total control of all companies. Okay, even Ma Wen had to step down. He's controlling all the companies. All right, all become state-owned in order to move into socialism. So we don't know where we're going to end this, but basically what we are trying to find out at the end of this story, tragedy of the commons, there are two key points. Number one is that when we calculate all these costs and distribution with resources, number one, resources is not unlimited, and therefore the environmental cost must be, there's a typo here, environmental cost is no A, must be accounted for. We have to calculate that into account. And the second thing that Gary Harding propose a very good statement. Okay, this statement is still open. I don't have any perfect answer yet. His statement is that there is no technological fix is there. So this is a conditional clause according to Gary. He was saying that technology cannot fix this. But I'm not so sure. Actually, every day we are using technology to go against the two laws, right? We have to use a lot of energy or technological fix, all right? I go back and change it. So let's stop here for a while and then we'll have more discussion. Let's take a break.